Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center. And today our subject is Jewish Heroes of America. Now this is an interesting topic because first of all, many people don't understand the significance of Jewish life that it has affected our American culture. Of course, I'm sure many people would, if I would ask, name me a few prominent American Jewish people, throw out Albert Einstein, of course, and maybe people would throw out a few other names, maybe Sandy Koufax, if you're going to use a sports hero, Mark Spitz. And there may be a few people more that you would mention, for example, Henry Kissinger. It goes on and on. I'm sure there's a few, but there's very many also that are not maybe so prominent, and so to speak, that you would say, but behind the scenes, the Jewish people have been, from the beginning of the Jewish American history, the Jewish people have had significant actually effect on many aspects of Jewish history. Now, of course, I'm going to use this book, Jewish Heroes of America, which is very interesting. And, of course, surely in the short period of time we have, we can't go through all Jewish heroes because obviously, we're talking about 200 years of history and the impact of millions of Jewish people, but we're going to take a little earlier in history. We're going to go back over 100 years into the Civil War. Now, probably, hopefully, that in future shows we'll get into more heroes, maybe a little bit more current. We'll get up to the modern-day era. And many people are Jewish and that had an effect. Sometimes they're behind the scenes. Sometimes they're Jewish and you wouldn't really know it. Albert Einstein, people do know is the Jewish people. Many times there's people that, oh, he's really Jewish, and you know them and they're prominent, but you didn't understand how really Jewish they are. So let's go back a little bit into American history because it is significant, and we'll hopefully in coming up forthcoming shows we'll talk about more recently. But this one, the reason maybe I picked on the Civil War is because it has been said, and I think it's a little bit anti-Semitic, but I think it's a little bit of ignorance, honest ignorance, that Jewish people are known, all right, they're scientists, and people say, oh yeah, doctors and lawyers, yeah, I know so many Jewish doctors and lawyers. And then Jewish people themselves would say that, and even maybe movie stars and comedians, for example, there's certain fields that Jewish people are prominent in, but it seems that soldiers in the military are not one of those fields. So it comes out sometimes people say that the Jewish people don't carry their weight when it comes to the military aspect of this country. And that's why I think I picked on the Civil War because, well, we'll talk about the other wars, of course, like I said, hopefully in other upcoming shows. But I just wanted to at least bring out that the Jewish people have carried their weight in the wars, in the armies or the armed forces, and have not just carried their weight, have been very prominent in those fields also. So that's maybe why I picked it. It's some field that I don't think people would pick. Oh, Jewish people, sure, they're big in the military. I don't know how many people would say that. Like I said, the sciences and the professions and the arts, people would say that, but that's why I want to, of course, that's what we're here for, to educate, and what people don't know, we're going to fill them in. And therefore, we're going to learn about the Civil War, where the Jewish people, and you have to even remember, and we've talked about it many times on the show, a significant fact that the Jewish people had not made significant amount of immigration to this country until 1880. So therefore, of course, Civil War is in 1860 to 65. You're not talking that many Jewish people, and the population of course, of America wasn't that great compared to today, and surely the Jewish people weren't either, even percentage-wise. The great flood of Jewish immigration coming to America, you're talking between 1880 and 1920. So saying all that, there's going to be, it shows even in the Civil War, way back when there weren't that many Jewish people, there was actually significant amount of Jewish people in the military. And that also goes for the North and South. I mean, I hope nobody's carrying a grudge against the Confederacy after over 100 years, but we're not going to take sides, and it's hopefully bygones are bygones. I don't know how many people in the South still feel that way, but we're going to take that aspect that we're not going to North or South, and there people fought and earnestly for both sides this is both sides in America, and there were Jewish people, very interesting enough, and people may not think the Jewish people in the South, you think of Jews in New York or Chicago or LA, obviously there weren't too many people living in Los Angeles in the Civil War time, But the South, people say, well, maybe there's a few small communities, but the Jewish people were very prominent in the Confederacy, and we will see that also. And I hope people don't mind that the Jewish people were on the side of the South, but like I said, that's old history. And even both sides, I'm sure, were sincere in their feelings of their side. So that's interesting that we're going to see both sides. Well, without further ado, let's get into it. About the Civil War creates Jewish soldiers and heroes. When in the South, Jewish volunteers flocked to the Confederate cause. Captain J. Rossler and Private Leo Bloom were widely recognized for their role in the Southern resistance. In Charlotte, North Carolina, Jewish women raised $150 for the Confederate cause. The role of the Confederate Jewish soldiers in the Civil War can best be described by the words of T.N. Wall, who commanded a Southern Legion. Two of the infantry companies had a large number of Jews in their rank. The largest company in the command, 100 men, were officered by Jews, and 3/4 of the rank and file were of that faith. There were also a number of Jews scattered throughout the command in other companies. They were all volunteers. There was not a Jew conscript in the Legion. As soldiers, they were brave, orderly, well-disciplined, and in no respect inferior to the gallant body of which they formed a prominent part. Their behavior in camp as in the field was exemplary. No Jew in the command was arraigned before a court-martial, and in proportion to their numbers, there were few applications for leave of absence, and their regular habits caused very few of their names to appear on the hospital rolls. In battle, without distinction of race or religion, all were apparently willing and eager for the contest. I will say, however, I never saw or heard of any Jew shrinking or failing to answer any call of duty or danger. End of quote. In the Civil War, Jews responded to the call of duty, whether it be for the North or the South, and they proved that they could be good soldiers as well as heroes in fighting for their country. Well, right away we have something, like I said, very significant, and maybe people don't even think of a Jewish population of anything in the 1860s, but like say there were 150,000 Jewish people, and we have first-hand reports at that time that the Jewish people fought valiantly for both sides. So just, I guess, to dispel the myth that the Jewish people shirk from their duty in the military. The first Jewish army chaplains are approved during the Civil War. Allen resigned, and the regiment, under the command of Colonel Max Friedman, decided to test this law with the nomination of Rabbi Arnold Fischel, an ordained rabbi and an experienced lobbyist. The Secretary of War was compelled by law to deny the nomination. Rabbi Fischel began a year of lobbying until Congress passed another law allowing rabbis to be commissioned as army chaplains. On July 17, 1862, Congress changed the wording of the law to include the words religious denomination instead of Christian denomination, and legal discrimination against Jews ended in the military. Rabbi Fischel was finally commissioned to replace Allen as the chaplain of the 5th Pennsylvania Cavalry. Rabbi Jacob Franklin, a well-known cantor of Congregation Shalom of Philadelphia, was commissioned on September 18, 1882 as the first official Jewish chaplain. He attended to the military hospitals in the Philadelphia area. The first regimental chaplain was Ferdinand Leopold Sarner, a native of Germany who was elected by the 54th New York Volunteer Regiment. Most of the soldiers in the regiment were German-speaking. Rabbi Sarner was commissioned on April 10, 1863. He was the first Jewish chaplain to be wounded and the first Jewish chaplain to go AWOL, absent without leave. He was severely wounded in Gettysburg and was hospitalized awaiting his formal discharge papers. Feeling better, however, he didn't wait for his discharge papers to arrive and left on his own to go home. The Jewish military chaplain was created in the Civil War. It started a long tradition and legacy of brave and dedicated Jewish chaplains serving God and country. So again, in all aspects of the Army, we see that there is a Jewish presence and, of course, Jewish chaplaincy, which, again, is very interesting to note. Of course, the country was, well, 1776, you're talking almost 100 years old till the Civil War, and the first time when they had to fight for the rights for Jewish chaplains in the Army, and that did take place in the Civil War. But like I say, it's a long struggle. Now everybody's equal. Maybe some people say there still should be some more equality in different areas. I guess it's an ongoing struggle, but there was a major struggles even way back when. Another Civil War story, just to be sure that we cover the Civil War properly. Edward Salomon, a hero of Gettysburg. Salomon was born in Schleswig-Holstein and came to America when he was in his teens. He held down various jobs, and then he decided to go to Chicago to study law. When the Civil War erupted, he helped from the 82nd Illinois Infantry Regiment. His ability to lead men was quickly recognized, and he rapidly rose through the ranks. After the Battle of Atlanta, Colonel John Cleveland Robinson recognized the feats of Colonel Salomon when he wrote, "I consider Colonel Salomon one of the most deserving officers. His regiment is deserving of his high praise. In point of discipline, he is second to none in the Corps. Its record will bear safe comparison with any of the same age in the Army." At the end of the Civil War, General Salomon led his men in a 6-hour parade on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., where General Sherman bade them farewell. Salomon returned to Chicago and was chosen to be clerk of Cook County. In 1869, he was given a birthday present by President Grant when he appointed him to be the governor of the territory of Washington. After his tenure as governor, Salomon moved to California and he was elected to the legislature. He was also elected the department commander for California, the Grand Army of the Republic. General Salomon demonstrated through his feats in leadership in battle that Jews in America can and do serve and fight for their country when the need occurs. So, Now we're up to the third story, and just saying that Jewish people, again, and rightfully deserved to be in head of armies, and they fought together and bravely for their armies. Just very interesting. I just want to bring out to you over here that he's not going to bring out to you, but Jefferson Davis's, and talking, he was the president of the Confederacy, of course, remember our American history, that maybe he wasn't a hero in certain senses, but the Secretary of State of the Confederacy was a Jewish person. So, like I say, let's give equal time. Now you think of all the Jewish people in Chicago, New York, of course, and there still is a prominent Jewish presence in the South, and they also fought bravely for their Confederacy. And it goes both ways also. We'll get into World War I, that, of course, that there was Jewish people in America, we're going to learn, that fought for the Americans, but there were Jewish people in Germany who fought for the German side. So wherever the Jewish people are, they are loyal to their governments, no matter where they are. Edward Rosewater served as telegrapher for President Lincoln, another Civil War story. Edward Rosewater was then transferred to the War Department in Washington. President Lincoln was a frequent visitor to his office and would read the field dispatches to keep abreast of the latest movements of the Army. Rosewater, in his writings, tells of an embarrassing encounter with Lincoln. He and his friends were on duty refreshing themselves with a pail of beer, which was against Army regulations, when Lincoln walked in on them. The president didn't admonish them, but instead gave one of them a quarter to get a fresh pail of beer. I guess beer was a little cheaper those days, 100 years ago, than they are today. In any case, when the pail of beer was passed around, Lincoln drank from the bucket, the same as the others. When the war was over, Rosewater went to Omaha, Nebraska to work as a telegrapher and as a newspaper correspondent. He founded the Omaha Daily Bee and was elected to the state legislature in 1871. Rosewater became a member of the Republican National Committee and served as a member of many federal government committees. He died in 1906. So again, in every aspect of the Civil War, we see that there's Jewish people behind the scenes helping out, sometimes not behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, as we say, but of course also behind the scenes, which in any war effort, of course, is needed also. You need everybody, not just the people on the front. Okay, another Civil War. We're really giving you a good lesson in Civil War history. I know it's 100 years ago, but it's part of our heritage also of America. Sergeant Leopold Karpeles received the Congressional Medal of Honor. Carpellis was in many more battles after this engagement. He saw action at Whitehall, Kingston, Goldsboro, Gun Swamp, Gettysburg, etc. He was wounded several times and once so severely that he was permanently lamed. He was in the Mount Pleasant General Hospital in Washington, D.C. with his badly wounded leg when his romance developed. Rabbi Simon Mundheim of the Washington Hebrew congregation was a chaplain for the Union Army. His wife Hannah and his two daughters, Henrietta and Sarah, went with him on a visitation to the hospitalized soldiers where they would read to them or write their letters. It was on one of these visits that Sarah and Leopold met and fell in love. The doctors wanted to amputate his leg, but they felt that if he received care at home, the leg might be saved. The Mundheim family took Leopold home with them, and he was able to save his leg. 5 years after he was married to Sarah, she and her third baby died in childbirth. His sister-in-law, Henrietta, came to take care of the remaining children. He married her, and they were blessed with 6 children. The oldest boy was Herman Leopold Carpellis, who served as the first president of the Brotherhood of Congregation B'nai Yeshurun when it was in Newark, New Jersey. Dr. Simon Carpellis, another son, and his wife, Dr. Kate Carpellis, served with honor in World War I, and they are buried in Arlington Cemetery. Hazel Carpellis Hecht, grandmother of Leopold and daughter of Herman Leopold Carpellis, is a professional illustrator and lives in Verona, New Jersey. Little did Leopold Carpellis think that when he came here as a teenager from Austria in 1849, that he would be a hero and leave a legacy and family to enrich our country. So again, here's a real Congressional Medal of Honor, someone who came from an immigrant from another country, but surely came to America and helped out in many ways. And of course, we're not just going to say only military, and that's foolish to say that. But again, military is an important part of the country. Let's face it, you need a military, and you need to fight your battles when you need to fight. And the Jewish people came right through with flying colors when they needed to. And here's 5 additional Jewish Civil War Medal of Honor recipients. Levi was severely wounded at the Battle of the Wilderness in January 1864. He recovered in time to be President. General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Proximate, where before he returned to his regiment, he received the Congressional Medal of Honor. Henry Heller was a sergeant in Company A, 66th Ohio Infantry, and he received his Congressional Medal of Honor for his daring in the Battle of Chancellorsville. He was in a party of 4, and they were under heavy fire from the enemy. They came across a wounded Confederate officer, and they volunteered to go through heavy gunfire to return him to their lines. The Union Army obtained much-needed information from this officer, which saved many lives. Abraham Cohn was a sergeant major of Company K, 4th Vermont Infantry. He received his Congressional Medal of Honor for 2 different acts of bravery. At the Battle of the Wilderness, he rallied and reformed the disorganized fleeing troops from several regiments and established a new line of defense, defense that held. The Battle of Petersburg, Virginia, on July 30th, 1864, he bravely and coolly carried orders to the advanced Union line under severe fire from the Confederate troops. David Obransky was a private in Company B, 58th Ohio Infantry. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor for gallantry in many actions, which included the battles of Shiloh and Vicksburg. Isaac Gauss was a corporal in Company E, 2nd Ohio Cavalry. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor for capturing the colors of the 8th South Carolina Infantry in hand-to-hand combat while on a reconnaissance along the Berryville and Winchester Pike in 1864. There were 6 Jewish recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor in the Civil War. They were the forerunners of the many Jewish military heroes who were to receive this prestigious medal in the future wars of our country. Well, just about all for now, but I think we said enough of a Jewish lesson of Civil War, that the Jewish people were here, that they did live in this area in the country at that time, and of course not only that, but they helped out the Civil War. And I mean, he didn't say so many stories about the Confederacy, but the truth is that they helped out there also, even though they were the losing side, but they did actually fought very bravely.